Dusty Creek Saga, Texas Lawman Chronicles, a Frontier Tale. Chapter 1, A Lone Star Sheriff. The dusty winds of West Texas swept through the small town of Dusty Creek, where tumbleweeds rolled down the sun-baked streets, and the scorching sun painted a relentless picture of the arid landscape. Sheriff Daniel, Dusty, Callahan, a seasoned lawman with a rugged face weathered by years of duty, stood tall outside the modest sheriff's office. Dusty Creek was a place where everyone knew everyone else, and secrets were as hard to keep as water in the desert. Sheriff Callahan was the undisputed authority in this town, responsible for maintaining law and order with a team of just 5 lawmen, including himself. It was a tight-knit group, bound by duty and the vast expanse of the Texas sky that seemed to stretch on forever. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the town, Sheriff Callahan leaned against the porch railing, squinting his eyes against the fading daylight. He ran a hand through his salt and pepper hair, thinking about the challenges that lay ahead. Inside the sheriff's office, his 4 deputies, Jake, Quickdraw Malone, the sharpshooter, Sarah Spurs Bennett, the fearless horsewoman, Miguel, Rattlesnake, Rodriguez, the tracker with a sixth sense for trouble, and Emily, Sundance, Hayes, the youngest and most eager of the bunch, waited for their orders. "All right, folks," Sheriff Callahan called out as he stepped inside, the door creaking behind him. The dimly lit room smelled of old leather and gun oil. Maps of Dusty Creek and the surrounding desert hung on the walls. "We've got a situation on our hands." The deputies gathered around the worn-out wooden table, their eyes reflecting the uncertainty that lingered in the air. Sheriff Callahan unfolded a telegram, its yellowed paper hinting at urgent news. "We've got reports of a gang moving in from the east," the sheriff announced, his gaze unwavering. "They're trouble, no doubt about it. We're the only thing standing between Dusty Creek and chaos. We need to ride out at first light and put a stop to it." His deputies nodded in understanding. The room buzzed with a mixture of tension and determination. This was their town, and they were the thin line that protected it. As they prepared for the looming confrontation, the shadows of Dusty Creek seemed to stretch even longer, as if the very land itself held its breath, waiting to see if the sheriff and his deputies could uphold justice in a town where the vastness of Texas was only matched by the size of its challenges. Chapter 2, Shadows on the Horizon. The first light of dawn painted the sky in hues of pink and orange, as Sheriff Callahan and his deputies gathered in front of the sheriff's office. The air was cool, and the promise of a scorching Texas day lingered on the horizon. Horses were saddled, and the clinking of spurs echoed in the stillness of the morning. "Listen up, everyone," Sheriff Callahan spoke, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "We're heading out to the outskirts of town. If these outlaws are making their move, that's where we'll find them. Keep your wits about you, and let's bring law to these parts." The small group of lawmen set out on horseback, their silhouettes cutting through the early light as they rode towards the rising sun. The town of Dusty Creek, with its wooden storefronts and quiet streets, lay behind them, seemingly holding its breath as its protectors ventured into the vastness of the Texas wilderness. As they rode, the landscape changed from the familiar town outskirts to open plains, dotted with cacti and mesquite trees. Sheriff Callahan led the way, his eyes scanning the horizon for any signs of trouble. The tension in the air was palpable, and the rhythmic beat of hooves on the dusty trail seemed to echo the heartbeat of the town they served. After hours of riding, they reached the edge of a canyon. Sheriff Callahan pulled his horse to a stop, his hand raised to signal the others. The deputies gathered around him, their faces reflecting a mix of determination and anticipation. "They're out there," Sheriff Callahan said, squinting into the distance. "We need to approach carefully. Quickdraw, keep an eye on that ridge to the left. Spurs, you take the right. Rattlesnake, check for tracks. Sundance, stay close. We don't know what we're walking into." The lawmen spread out, each taking their assigned position, their eyes sharp and senses alert. The canyon seemed to hold its breath, and the only sound was the distant call of a hawk circling overhead. Suddenly, Quickdraw signaled from the ridge, his hand slicing through the air. Sheriff Callahan and the others rode to join him, their eyes narrowing at the sight below. A dust cloud kicked up in the distance, and the distant thud of hooves carried on the wind. "They're coming, Sheriff," Quickdraw said, his gaze fixed on the approaching riders. Sheriff Callahan's jaw tightened. The outlaws had arrived, and Dusty Creek's fate hung in the balance. With a nod, he drew his weathered hat lower over his brow. "Get ready, folks. It's time to show these varmints that Dusty Creek ain't a town to be trifled with."
Hey there, fellow listeners. If you're enjoying this free audiobook as much as I am, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fantastic content. Your support means the world. Thanks a ton.
Chapter 3: Showdown at Dusty Creek. The tension in the air thickened as Sheriff Callahan and his deputies prepared for the impending showdown. The outlaw gang emerged from the dust cloud, a ragtag group of riders with weathered faces and cold, calculating eyes. They wore bandanas to conceal their identities, and the glint of sunlight off their weapons hinted at trouble. Sheriff Callahan's hand tightened around the grip of his revolver. The town of Dusty Creek depended on the resilience of its lawmen, and this would be a test of their mettle. The two groups faced each other across the arid plain, the only sound the whistling wind and the distant call of a lone coyote. The outlaw leader, a tall figure in a black hat, spurred his horse forward, stopping just out of gunshot range. Well, if it ain't the law dogs of Dusty Creek," the outlaw leader sneered, a wicked grin spreading across his face. "We heard this town was ripe for the talking. Figured we'd come and introduce ourselves proper-like." Sheriff Callahan's gaze remained steady, his eyes locked onto the outlaw leader. "You've got no place here. Turn back now, and maybe we'll let you ride away." Laughter echoed from the outlaw gang, a chilling sound that hung in the air. The tension escalated as both sides measured each other, the vast expanse of Texas serving as the battleground for a conflict that would determine the fate of Dusty Creek. Without warning, the outlaw leader drew his weapon, a shot ringing out into the silence. The lawmen of Dusty Creek reacted with practiced precision. Quickdraw Malone's name proved apt as he drew his revolver in a blur, firing a shot that rang true and sent the outlaw's hat flying. The showdown had begun. Gunfire erupted from both sides, echoing off the canyon walls as dust kicked up from the dry ground. Deputies took cover behind rocks, returning fire with a disciplined intensity. Spurs Bennett expertly maneuvered her horse, firing from the saddle with deadly accuracy. Rattlesnake Rodriguez, true to his name, tracked the movements of the outlaws with a keen sense, signaling the lawmen to anticipate the next move. Sheriff Callahan stood tall, his presence commanding respect as he aimed his revolver with unwavering focus. Sundance Hayes, the youngest deputy, fought with a determination that belied her age, proving her worth in the heat of battle. The standoff raged on, the fate of Dusty Creek hanging in the balance. Shots rang out, and the air was thick with the acrid scent of gunpowder. The outlaw gang, realizing they had underestimated the resolve of Dusty Creek's lawmen, began to retreat under the relentless assault. As the dust settled, Sheriff Callahan surveyed the scene. The outlaws were retreating into the vast Texas wilderness, leaving behind the echoes of their failed attempt to seize the town. Dusty Creek, though scarred, stood strong. The lawmen gathered in the aftermath, their faces marked by the intensity of the confrontation. Sheriff Callahan looked at each deputy with a nod of acknowledgement. The town of Dusty Creek had faced adversity, and its lawmen had proven that they were the guardians it needed. As the dust settled and the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the resilient town, Sheriff Callahan knew that the challenges of the Texas frontier would persist. But for now, Dusty Creek could rest knowing that its lawmen, a tight-knit group of 5, had stood firm against the shadows on the horizon. Chapter 4: Aftermath and Reflections. The evening sun cast long shadows over the quiet town of Dusty Creek as the lawmen regrouped in the sheriff's office. The air inside the room was heavy with the lingering scent of gun smoke, a reminder of the day's fierce confrontation. The deputies, worn but resolute, gathered around the worn-out wooden table, their expressions a mix of relief and reflection. Sheriff Callahan, still wearing the dust of the day's battle, leaned against the table, surveying his deputies with a sense of pride. They had faced adversity, defended their town, and emerged victorious. but the weight of their duty lingered in the room. "Well done, everyone," the sheriff spoke, breaking the silence. "We held our ground today, but we can't let our guard down. Those outlaws won't be gone for good. We need to stay vigilant." Quick-Draw Malone, holstering his revolver, nodded in agreement. "Sheriff's right. We may have sent them packing, but they'll be back. We need a plan, Dusty." The room fell into thoughtful silence as the lawmen considered their next moves. Outside, the town started to come back to life, with folks cautiously stepping out from their hiding places, peering from behind curtains to assess the aftermath. Spurs Bennett, her face streaked with dirt, spoke up. "We should send word to the neighboring towns, let them know what happened. The more eyes we have watching, the better." Sheriff Callahan nodded in approval. "Sundance, you're good with words. Draft a message to send out tomorrow. Let our neighbors know we stood firm and we're watching the horizon." Sundance Hayes, the youngest deputy, eagerly accepted the task, ready to prove herself once again. As she sat down with pen and paper, the sheriff turned to Rattlesnake Rodriguez. "Rattlesnake, I want you to gather some men. We need to fortify the town, set up patrols. We can't let ourselves be caught off guard." With a silent nod, Rattlesnake left the room, his footsteps echoing in the corridor. The sheriff then addressed the group as a whole. "We faced worse, and we'll face worse again. But Dusty Creek is our home, and we'll be damned if we let anyone take it from us." The lawmen dispersed to carry out their assigned tasks, leaving Sheriff Callahan alone with his thoughts. He walked to the window, gazing out at the town he had sworn to protect. The challenges of the Texas frontier were unyielding, but so were the people of Dusty Creek and their lawmen. As the night settled in, the sheriff knew that the echoes of the day's showdown would reverberate through the town. Dusty Creek had stood its ground, but the shadows on the horizon hinted at a future where the lawmen would once again be tested. The resilience of the Lone Star Sheriff and his deputies, however, was as enduring as the Texas landscape itself.
Hey there, fellow listeners. If you're enjoying this free audiobook as much as I am, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fantastic content. Your support means the world. Thanks a ton.
Chapter 5: The Calm Before the Storm. In the days that followed the showdown, Dusty Creek underwent a transformation. The town buzzed with activity as its resilient residents and lawmen worked to fortify their defenses. Barricades were erected, and makeshift watchtowers rose on the outskirts. The echoes of the recent confrontation lingered in every corner, a reminder that Dusty Creek, despite its serene facade, existed on the edge of a frontier teeming with uncertainty. Sundance Hayes, having penned the message, dispatched a rider to the neighboring towns. The news of Dusty Creek's stand against the outlaws spread like wildfire, reaching the ears of those who understood the language of the frontier, a language written in dust, sweat, and the shared determination of small towns surviving against the odds. Sheriff Callahan and his deputies maintained a constant vigilance. Patrols crisscrossed the perimeter, and the lawmen held frequent strategy meetings to anticipate the next move of the elusive outlaw gang. The townsfolk, too, contributed to the collective defense, standing side by side with the lawmen, armed and ready. As the days turned into nights, the town settled into an uneasy calm. The occasional howl of a distant coyote served as a stark reminder that the vastness of Texas held secrets that were yet to be revealed. The air was charged with anticipation, and the lawmen knew that the storm they had weathered was only the beginning. One evening, Sheriff Callahan stood on the porch of the sheriff's office, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows once again. Quick-Draw Malone joined him, the two men sharing a silent understanding that transcended words. "They'll be back," Quick-Draw said, his eyes squinting against the setting sun. "This ain't over, Dusty." The sheriff nodded, his gaze unwavering. "We're ready for them. We'll meet 'em head-on, just like we did before." In the distance, a rider approached, kicking up dust as they neared the town. The lawmen tensed, hands hovering near their weapons, but as the rider drew closer, a sense of recognition spread through the gathered crowd. It was the rider who had been sent to neighboring towns. They dismounted and handed a sealed letter to Sundance Hayes, who scanned its contents with furrowed brows. "What is it, Sundance?" Sheriff Callahan inquired. Sundance looked up, her expression a mix of concern and determination. "It's a response from the neighboring towns. They're sending help, Dusty. Riders, supplies, and even a few seasoned lawmen. They stand with us." A murmur of relief swept through the gathered townsfolk and lawmen. The sense of unity, born out of adversity, now bound Dusty Creek to its neighboring communities in a shared commitment to protect their homes. As the news spread, the town came alive with renewed energy. Preparation intensified, and the lawmen of Dusty Creek knew that the storm approaching on the horizon would be met not just by the strength of their resolve but by the combined force of the frontier communities standing shoulder to shoulder. The calm before the storm was shattered, replaced by a resolute determination. Dusty Creek had weathered the initial onslaught, and now, with reinforcements on the way, the Lone Star Sheriff and his deputies prepared for a confrontation that would define the future of their town and the unyielding spirit of the Texas frontier. Chapter 6: A Gathering Storm. The atmosphere in Dusty Creek crackled with a mixture of anticipation and unity. The townspeople worked tirelessly alongside the lawmen, fortifying the defenses and preparing for the inevitable return of the outlaw gang. The neighboring towns had responded to Dusty Creek's call for help, sending riders, supplies, and experienced lawmen to bolster the town's defenses. Sheriff Callahan held a meeting in the sheriff's office, where a map of the surrounding area was spread across the table. The seasoned lawmen from neighboring towns, with weathered faces and eyes that spoke of countless skirmishes, joined the discussion. "We know they'll be back," Sheriff Callahan declared, his gaze unwavering. "We've got a bigger force now, but we can't underestimate these outlaws. They're desperate, and desperation makes a man dangerous." The lawmen nodded in agreement, their expressions a mix of determination and caution. Quickdraw Malone spoke up. "We need to set up an ambush. Hit 'em hard and fast when they come riding into town. Make 'em regret ever thinking about Dusty Creek." Rattlesnake Rodriguez, with a map spread before him, traced a line with his finger. "This canyon here, Sheriff. It's narrow, easy to defend. We can station our men along the ridges, take 'em by surprise." The plan took shape as each lawman contributed their insights. Sundance Hayes, fueled by a newfound sense of purpose, listened intently, ready to prove herself once again. As the meeting concluded, the lawmen and their newly arrived allies dispersed to set the plan in motion. The town of Dusty Creek, once again, became a hive of activity. The energy was different this time, not just resilience but a shared determination to stand against the storm that loomed on the horizon. Days passed, each one filled with a mounting sense of anticipation. Patrols scoured the outskirts, and lookouts kept vigilant watch from the watchtowers. Dusty Creek became a fortress, surrounded by the arid Texas landscape, waiting for the inevitable clash. Finally, one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the town, the anticipated dust cloud appeared on the horizon. The outlaw gang, undeterred by the rumors of reinforcements, approached with a brazen confidence. Sheriff Callahan and his deputies took their positions. The lawmen from neighboring towns, seasoned and weathered, readied themselves for the confrontation. The tension in the air was palpable as the outlaws rode into the canyon, unaware that Dusty Creek was no longer the vulnerable town they had encountered before. As the first shots rang out, echoing through the narrow canyon, a battle cry erupted from the lawmen. Dusty Creek, now reinforced and united with its neighboring communities, stood against the storm with a force that could not be easily broken. The outlaw gang, caught off guard by the well-coordinated defense, faltered. The narrow canyon became a trap, and the lawmen fought with a ferocity born out of the shared commitment to protect their homes. The battle raged into the night, the flickering light of gunfire painting a chaotic tableau in the canyon. Dusty Creek, however, held firm, a beacon of resilience against the storm that sought to engulf it. As the dust settled and the dawn broke, the outlaws, battered and defeated, retreated into the vast Texas wilderness. The lawmen of Dusty Creek, along with their allies, stood triumphant in the aftermath of the confrontation. Sheriff Callahan, his face lined with weariness but eyes ablaze with determination, surveyed the scene. The storm had come, but Dusty Creek had weathered it with a strength that transcended the challenges of the Texas frontier. As the town began to assess the damage and tend to the wounded, the realization settled in: Dusty Creek, once a lone outpost, was now part of a network of frontier communities united in the face of adversity. The storm had passed, leaving Dusty Creek stronger, more resilient, and bound by a sense of solidarity that would endure in the vastness of the Texas landscape. The Lone Star Sheriff and his deputies, along with the lawmen from neighboring towns, stood as a testament to the unyielding spirit of those who called the frontier home. Chapter 7: Rebuilding and Renewal. The morning sun bathed Dusty Creek in a warm glow as the townspeople emerged from their shelters, cautiously stepping into the aftermath of the decisive battle. The echoes of gunfire had faded, replaced by a solemn quiet broken only by the distant sounds of horses and the creaking of wooden structures. Sheriff Callahan and his deputies moved through the town, surveying the damage and offering a reassuring presence to the shaken but resilient community. The lawmen from neighboring towns, having proven their mettle in the heat of battle, assisted with the cleanup and tended to the wounded. Dusty Creek bore the scars of the recent conflict: damaged storefronts, broken windows, and streets strewn with debris. But amidst the destruction, there was an unmistakable spirit of renewal. The town had faced adversity and emerged stronger, its sense of unity forged in the crucible of the Texas frontier. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, a communal effort to rebuild Dusty Creek took root. Townspeople gathered in impromptu groups, working side by side to repair structures and clear the streets. The camaraderie that had developed during the battle now fueled their determination to rebuild. Sheriff Callahan stood in the town square, addressing the gathered crowd. "Folks, we faced a storm, and we weathered it together. But our work isn't done. We rebuild not just our homes but the spirit of Dusty Creek. We stand stronger because we stand united." The townspeople responded with nods and murmurs of agreement, their faces reflecting a shared sense of purpose. Sundance Hayes, Quickdraw Malone, Spurs Bennett, and Rattlesnake Rodriguez joined the sheriff, their presence a symbol of continuity and resilience. In the following days, the transformation of Dusty Creek unfolded. Repairs progressed at a rapid pace, fueled by the collective determination to restore the town to its former glory. The lawmen, both local and from neighboring towns, patrolled the outskirts with renewed vigilance, ensuring that the threat had truly receded. As the weeks passed, Dusty Creek not only recovered but flourished. The scars of the battle became marks of pride, a testament to the town's indomitable spirit. New structures, sturdier and more resilient, replaced those that had been damaged. The Lone Star Sheriff and his deputies, along with the lawmen from neighboring towns, became revered figures in Dusty Creek. The bonds forged in the crucible of conflict remained unbroken, creating a network of frontier communities connected by a shared history of adversity and triumph. One evening, as the sun set over the rejuvenated town, Sheriff Callahan stood on the porch of the sheriff's office. The same porch from which he had watched the storm gather on the horizon. This time, however, the horizon seemed to stretch endlessly with the promise of a future written by the resilient hands of Dusty Creek's inhabitants. The wind carried whispers of renewal, and the vast Texas sky held the silhouette of a town that had faced a storm and emerged not just intact but fortified. Dusty Creek, once a lone outpost, now stood as a beacon in the Texas frontier, its spirit unbroken, its story echoing through the endless expanse of the Lone Star State. Chapter 8: A Lone Star Legacy. As the seasons changed, Dusty Creek settled into a newfound sense of stability. The scars of the past began to fade, replaced by the signs of resilience etched into the very fabric of the town. The lawmen, once strangers from neighboring towns, became an integral part of Dusty Creek's identity. Sheriff Callahan and his deputies continued to patrol the outskirts, ensuring the safety of the town. Quickdraw Malone, Spurs Bennett, Rattlesnake Rodriguez, and Sundance Hayes had become a formidable team, their camaraderie a reflection of the unyielding spirit of the Lone Star Sheriff and his deputies. In the heart of Dusty Creek, a memorial stood, a testament to the battle that had tested the town's mettle. Engraved on weathered stone were the names of those who had stood against the storm, a reminder of the sacrifices made and the unity forged in the crucible of adversity. The town square, once marked by destruction, now thrived with life. Bustling market stalls, laughter, and the sounds of children playing filled the air. Dusty Creek had not just survived, it had flourished, becoming a beacon of hope in the vast Texas landscape. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Sheriff Callahan stood on the porch of the sheriff's office. The town spread out before him, a living testament to the resilience of its people. Quickdraw Malone joined him, leaning against the railing. "We've come a long way, Dusty," Quickdraw remarked, his eyes scanning the town. Sheriff Callahan nodded, his gaze filled with a quiet pride. "The spirit of this town runs deep. It's the people that make Dusty Creek what it is. We've faced storms, but we've weathered them together." As the years passed, Dusty Creek's legacy grew. The tale of the Lone Star Sheriff and his deputies became a part of the town's folklore, recounted by storytellers around campfires and passed down through generations. New faces joined the lawmen ranks, eager to uphold the legacy of those who had come before them. The tight-knit community that had formed during the storm endured, creating a lineage of lawmen who stood as guardians of Dusty Creek. Sundance Hayes, once the youngest deputy, took her place as a seasoned lawwoman, her determination unwavering. Spurs Bennett became the trusted mentor, passing on her skills to the next generation. Rattlesnake Rodriguez, though silver-haired, remained a keen tracker, his instincts as sharp as ever. Quickdraw Malone, with his weathered hat and a quick draw, stood as a symbol of the town's enduring spirit. Sheriff Callahan, the patriarch of Dusty Creek, continued to lead with wisdom and a steady hand. His name became synonymous with the town, and his legacy was woven into the very fabric of Dusty Creek's identity. As the Lone Star Sheriff watched the sun set over Dusty Creek, he knew that the story of this town was far from over. The frontier would always pose challenges, but the spirit of Dusty Creek, fortified by the storms of the past, would endure, an unbroken legacy written in the vastness of the Texas sky.
Hey there, fellow listeners. If you're enjoying this free audiobook as much as I am, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fantastic content. Your support means the world. Thanks a ton.
Chapter 9: Echoes of the Frontier. Years passed, and Dusty Creek evolved into a thriving community that bore the indelible marks of its history. The legacy of the Lone Star Sheriff and his deputies endured, becoming a living part of the town's narrative. The once battered structure stood as a testament to resilience, their walls whispering tales of a storm weathered and a community strengthened. Sheriff Callahan, now a venerable figure with lines etched on his weathered face, continued to oversee the town. His deputies had grown into seasoned lawmen, and new faces joined the ranks, eager to carry on the tradition of protecting Dusty Creek from the challenges of the frontier. One such newcomer was Jake Wrangler Turner, a young lawman with a quick draw and a sense of idealism reminiscent of a young Sundance Hayes. Wrangler's arrival sparked a wave of nostalgia, as the older lawmen saw echoes of their past selves in the eager newcomer. The town had expanded, and the outskirts now boasted more homesteads and farms, a testament to Dusty Creek's resilience and its ability to attract those seeking a fresh start on the frontier. The memorial in the town square, once a stark reminder of conflict, now served as a symbol of unity and triumph. One day, as Sheriff Callahan sat on the porch of the sheriff's office, Wrangler approached, his hat tipped low. "Sheriff, reckon I've got a lot to learn. Any advice for a greenhorn like me?" The sheriff chuckled, a twinkle in his eye. "You remind me of a younger version of myself, eager and ready to take on the frontier. My advice? Respect the land, respect the people, and never forget that Dusty Creek is more than just a town. It's a legacy." As the sun dipped low in the Texas sky, casting long shadows over Dusty Creek, a rider approached from the horizon. The town stirred with anticipation, and Sheriff Callahan squinted, recognizing the silhouette. It was Emily Sundance Hayes, now a seasoned lawwoman riding back into town after a patrol. Sundance dismounted, a nod of acknowledgement exchanged with Sheriff Callahan. The torch had been passed, and she had become a guardian of Dusty Creek in her own right. The legacy of the Lone Star Sheriff lived on not just in the structures and the stories, but in the hearts of those who continued to uphold the frontier spirit. As the three lawmen stood together, Sheriff Callahan, Sundance Hayes, and the eager newcomer Wrangler, a sense of continuity and renewal filled the air. Dusty Creek, once a lone outpost on the edge of the frontier, had become a beacon, attracting those who sought a community forged in the crucible of the Texas landscape. The echoes of the frontier resonated through Dusty Creek, a town that had faced storms and emerged stronger, a testament to the enduring spirit of those who called it home. The vast Texas sky, now painted in hues of twilight, held the promise of a future written by the hands of those who had weathered the storms of the Lone Star State. Chapter 10: Sunset on the Frontier. As the years rolled on, Dusty Creek continued to thrive, becoming a symbol of resilience and community on the vast Texas frontier. New generations of lawmen and townsfolk carried the torch, ensuring that the legacy of the Lone Star Sheriff lived on. The town, now a bustling hub, retained its small-town charm, but its roots ran deep, anchored in the stories etched into the walls of its buildings and the hearts of its people. Sheriff Callahan, having seen countless sunsets over Dusty Creek, sat on the porch of the sheriff's office, a reflection of a life spent in service to the town. His eyes, still sharp, gazed out at the horizon where the sun dipped low, casting a warm glow over the landscape. Sundance Hayes, now a seasoned leader in her own right, approached the sheriff. Wrangler Turner, the eager newcomer from years ago, stood beside her. The trio shared a silent understanding, a connection forged through the challenges faced and the triumphs celebrated. "Sheriff," Sundance began, her voice carrying the weight of gratitude, "Dusty Creek owes so much to you. Your legacy is woven into every corner of this town." Sheriff Callahan nodded, a humble smile gracing his weathered face. "But it's not just my legacy, it's the legacy of every lawman, every townsfolk who stood against the storms. Dusty Creek is a community, a living testament to the spirit of the Texas frontier." As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the town square, a sense of tranquility settled over Dusty Creek. The rhythmic creaking of the nearby windmill and the distant sounds of laughter from the local saloon carried on the evening breeze. "You've done us proud, Sheriff," Wrangler remarked, a sense of admiration in his eyes. Sheriff Callahan stood, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "The frontier has a way of testing you, but it also forges something deep within. Remember, Dusty Creek isn't just a place, it's a state of mind. Keep it alive." With those words, the trio stood together, overlooking the town they had dedicated their lives to protecting. The echoes of the frontier, the stories of storms weathered and victories earned, seemed to dance in the fading light. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a final burst of warm hues over Dusty Creek, a new chapter began. The legacy of the Lone Star Sheriff and his deputies, now shared by those who had followed in their footsteps, would continue to unfold in the ever-expanding tale of the Texas frontier. And so, as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Dusty Creek stood as a testament to the enduring spirit of those who called it home, a spirit that would echo through the ages, carried by the winds of the Lone Star State.
Hey there, fellow listeners. If you're enjoying this free audiobook as much as I am, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fantastic content. Your support means the world. Thanks a ton.